You've been called cold, detached, emotionally unavailable. But here's what they don't understand. What they mistake for coldness is actually the most sophisticated form of emotional intelligence that exists. Welcome back to Official Sigma, Male, where we decode the misunderstood psychology of the Sigma mindset. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most controversial aspects of Sigma male behavior, that perceived emotional distance that makes others uncomfortable. Society has programmed us to believe that emotional expression equals emotional health. But Sigma males operate on a completely different frequency. What others see as coldness is actually emotional mastery, the ability to process, understand, and respond to emotions with strategic precision rather than reactive chaos. Think about the last time someone accused you of being cold. Were you really emotionless, or were you simply refusing to let emotions hijack your decision-making process? Were you truly detached, or were you maintaining the emotional space necessary to see situations clearly without the fog of reactive feelings clouding your judgment? This isn't about suppressing emotions. It's about emotional sovereignty. It's about understanding that true strength doesn't come from wearing your heart on your sleeve, but from having such deep emotional awareness that you can choose how, when and with whom you share your inner world. This is the Sigma advantage that alphas envy and betas can't comprehend. In the next 30 minutes, we're going to completely reframe how you understand your emotional landscape. We'll explore why your so-called coldness is actually a superpower, how emotional strength manifests in ways that others can't recognize, and why society's emotional expectations are designed to keep you weak and dependent. If you're ready to stop apologizing for your emotional intelligence and start leveraging it as the powerful tool it is, make sure to subscribe to Official Sigma Male and ring that notification bell. We're building a community of men who refuse to be emotionally manipulated and choose emotional mastery instead. The misunderstood nature of Sigma, emotional processing. Here's the truth that no one wants to tell you. Your brain is wired differently. While the world operates on emotional autopilot, reacting to every stimulus like programmed robots, you possess something far more sophisticated. Emotional processing architecture that prioritizes analysis over impulse. When someone cuts you off in traffic, the average person experiences an immediate emotional hijacking. Their amygdala fires, stress hormones flood their system, and they're consumed by rage for the next 20 minutes. But you observe the situation, assess the driver's probable mental state, recognize their behavior says nothing about you, and move on. This isn't coldness. This is emotional evolution. The Sigma male brain has developed what neuroscientists call emotional regulation superiority. While others are drowning in the chemical soup of reactive emotions, you've learned to create space between stimulus and response. This space is where wisdom lives, where strategic thinking happens, and where true emotional intelligence operates. Consider Marcus, a Sigma male executive I've studied extensively. During a hostile board meeting where colleagues were shouting and pointing fingers, Marcus remained calm. Not because he didn't feel the tension, but because he understood that emotional reactivity would compromise his ability to find solutions. While others saw his composure as cold detachment, he was actually processing multiple emotional layers, recognizing the fear behind the aggression, identifying the power dynamics at play, and formulating responses that would de-escalate rather than inflame. This is emotional processing at its highest level. You're not ignoring emotions. You're processing them through a sophisticated filtration system that most people lack. Your brain has learned to separate useful emotional information from emotional noise. When someone is upset with you, instead of immediately defending or attacking, you pause to consider, is this emotion providing valuable information about the situation? Is this person's emotional state about me or about their own internal struggles? How can I respond in a way that serves the highest good? Society misinterprets this processing delay as coldness because they've been conditioned to believe that immediate emotional reaction equals authenticity. They think that if you don't immediately mirror their emotional state, you're somehow deficient. But consider this: a skilled surgeon doesn't become emotional during a complex operation. A pilot doesn't panic during turbulence. They maintain emotional equilibrium precisely because lives depend on their ability to think clearly under pressure. Your emotional processing works the same way. You've unconsciously trained yourself to maintain emotional stability because you understand that your clearest thinking happens when you're not hijacked by reactive emotions. This doesn't mean you don't feel deeply. It means you feel intelligently. The research is clear on this. Studies from Stanford's Emotional Intelligence Lab show that individuals who can create space between emotional stimulus and response score higher on every measure of life satisfaction, relationship quality, and professional success. They call it emotional granularity, the ability to identify and distinguish between different emotional states rather than being overwhelmed by undifferentiated emotional chaos. But here's where it gets interesting. Your emotional processing style actually makes you more emotionally intelligent, not less. While others are consumed by their own emotional reactions, you're able to read the emotional undercurrents in any situation. You can sense when someone is masking insecurity with aggression, when apparent confidence is actually anxiety, when someone's anger is really disappointment. This emotional reading ability develops because you're not constantly distracted by your own emotional noise. It's like having a clear radio frequency while everyone else is dealing with static. You can tune in to the emotional broadcast of any situation because your own emotional system isn't constantly jamming the signal. Take workplace dynamics, for example. While your colleagues are caught up in office drama and emotional reactions to criticism, you're observing the larger patterns. You notice that the boss's harsh feedback always comes after board meetings, suggesting external pressure rather than personal animosity. You recognize that the colleague who seems hostile is actually struggling with imposter syndrome. This emotional intelligence allows you to navigate complex social situations with precision. The tragedy is that society labels this sophisticated emotional processing as a deficiency. They want you to be more emotionally available, which often translates to more emotionally reactive. They want you to respond immediately to emotional stimuli, to validate their feelings through your own emotional display, to prove your humanity through emotional vulnerability on demand. But demanding immediate emotional response is like demanding immediate medical diagnosis. Both require careful observation, analysis, and consideration to be truly helpful. Your emotional processing style serves everyone better in the long run, even if it doesn't provide the immediate emotional validation that others crave. This is why Sigma males often find themselves in leadership positions during crises. When everyone else is panicking, your emotional stability becomes a lighthouse in the storm. People naturally gravitate toward those who can maintain emotional equilibrium when the world feels chaotic. Your perceived coldness becomes the very warmth others need, the stability that allows them to find their own emotional balance. Understanding this about yourself changes everything. Instead of apologizing for your emotional processing style, you can recognize it as the sophisticated tool it is. Instead of trying to become more emotionally reactive to please others, you can appreciate the gift of emotional discernment you've developed. Strategic emotional distance versus toxic emotional suppression. There's a crucial distinction that most people miss entirely. the difference between strategic emotional distance and toxic emotional suppression. Society lumps them together, but they're as different as a precision instrument and a broken tool. Toxic emotional suppression is what happens when you bottle up emotions out of fear, shame, or inability to process them. It's the person who never expresses anger because they're terrified of conflict, or the man who can't cry because he was taught that tears equal weakness. This creates internal pressure that eventually explodes or implodes, damaging relationships and mental health. Strategic emotional distance, however, is emotional intelligence in action. It's the conscious choice to create space between yourself and emotional chaos so you can respond with wisdom rather than react with impulse. This isn't about avoiding emotions. It's about choosing when, where, and how to engage with them most effectively. Consider James, a Sigma male entrepreneur. When his business partner accused him of being heartless during a heated argument about company direction, James didn't immediately defend himself or escalate the conflict. Instead, he recognized that his partner was operating from fear about financial security. James maintained emotional distance, not because he didn't care, but because he cared enough to respond strategically rather than reactively. The key difference lies in conscious choice versus unconscious avoidance. Strategic distance involves full awareness of your emotions while choosing not to be controlled by them. You feel the anger, recognize the hurt, acknowledge the frustration, but you don't let these feelings hijack your decision-making process. This approach actually requires more emotional intelligence, not less. You must be deeply in tune with your emotional landscape to navigate it consciously. It's like being the director of your emotional experience rather than just an actor swept away by the script. Strategic emotional distance serves multiple purposes. First, it protects your energy from emotional vampires, those who dump their unprocessed emotions onto everyone around them. Second, it allows you to be truly helpful in emotional situations because you can think clearly while others are overwhelmed. Third, it maintains your ability to make decisions based on logic and values rather than temporary emotional states. This doesn't mean you never show emotion or vulnerability. It means you choose these moments intentionally with people who have earned your trust and in contexts where emotional expression serves a genuine purpose. Your emotions become a precision tool rather than a runaway train. The Sigma male understands that emotional mastery isn't about having no emotions. It's about emotions serving you rather than enslaving you. This strategic approach to emotional engagement is what allows Sigma males to remain calm in crisis, think clearly under pressure, and provide stability when others are drowning in emotional chaos. The power of emotional selectivity in relationships. Your emotional selectivity isn't coldness, it's wisdom. While others scatter their emotional energy like confetti, you invest it like a strategic asset manager, choosing quality connections over quantity validation. The average person gives their emotional energy to anyone who demands it. They react to every manipulation, engage with every drama, and share their deepest feelings with people who haven't earned that privilege. This leaves them emotionally bankrupt and confused about their own boundaries. Sigma males operate differently. You understand that emotional energy is finite and precious. When you choose to open up, it means something profound. Your vulnerability isn't cheap or common, it's rare and valuable. This selectivity creates deeper, more meaningful connections, rather than shallow, draining interactions. Consider the difference between a public fountain and a private well. Both provide water, but the experience and value are completely different. Your emotional availability works the same way. Selective access creates greater meaning and impact. This approach naturally filters your relationships. People seeking Emotional drama move on to easier targets, while those who appreciate depth and authenticity recognize the value of your selective investment. The result is fewer relationships of much higher quality, connections that nourish rather than drain your emotional reserves. How Sigma males develop emotional resilience through solitude. Solitude is your emotional training ground. While others fear being alone with their thoughts, you use solitude as a forge for developing unshakable emotional resilience. Most people never develop true emotional strength because they constantly seek external validation and distraction. They need others to process emotions with them, creating dependency rather than resilience. You've learned that solitude is where emotional muscles are built. During alone time, you're forced to face emotions directly without external buffers. This builds tolerance for emotional discomfort, the foundation of resilience. While others panic at the first sign of anxiety or sadness, you've learned these are temporary visitors that pass without resistance or feeding. This solitary processing teaches you to distinguish between emotions and facts, between temporary feelings and permanent truths. You learn that feeling rejected doesn't mean you are rejection, that anxiety doesn't equal danger. The resilience developed through solitude serves every area of life. When facing criticism, failure, or rejection, you don't need external support to process these experiences. Your emotional stability becomes a resource others can depend on rather than another demand on their energy. Reading emotions without absorbing them, the Sigma superpower. Your greatest emotional advantage is reading emotions without absorbing them. While others become emotional sponges, unconsciously taking on everyone's feelings, you observe emotions like data points rather than personal attacks. This skill develops from your natural emotional distance. Because you don't immediately react, you can observe patterns and dynamics with clarity. You notice fear behind aggression, hurt behind anger, insecurity behind arrogance. You read the emotional subtext without being pulled into the drama. This makes you incredibly effective with people. You respond to underlying needs rather than surface behaviors. When someone acts aggressive, you recognize the vulnerability underneath and respond accordingly. When someone is overly nice, you sense whether it's genuine or manipulative. The key is reading without absorbing. You don't take on others' anxiety, anger, or sadness as your own. You can be compassionate without being consumed, helpful without being hijacked. This ability makes you invaluable during crises. While others drown in emotional storms, you see clearly and respond effectively. You become the calm center others orbit around. Building authentic connections through controlled vulnerability. True connection doesn't require emotional reactivity. It requires controlled vulnerability. This means choosing to be vulnerable strategically with earned trust at appropriate times for genuine purposes. Controlled vulnerability is the opposite of emotional dumping. It's consciously revealing your inner world to someone who has demonstrated they can handle that privilege responsibly. You don't share trauma as a bonding technique or use vulnerability as manipulation. Instead, you reveal yourself gradually, testing whether the person can hold space for your authentic self without trying to fix, judge, or exploit what you share. This creates genuine intimacy based on mutual respect rather than emotional dependency. Your controlled approach to vulnerability actually creates deeper connections because people know that when you open up, it's real and intentional. Your emotional sharing has weight and meaning because it's not given freely to everyone. This strategy protects both parties. You avoid the pain of having your vulnerability misused, and others aren't overwhelmed by emotional information they can't handle. The result is authentic relationships built on foundation of trust rather than emotional chaos. Remember, your emotional strength isn't about having no feelings. It's about having feelings serve you rather than enslave you. That's the true power of Sigma emotional intelligence. Before we dive into these transformative insights, I want you to understand something crucial. Your emotional approach isn't broken, it's evolved. While others are slaves to every emotional fluctuation, you've developed the rare ability to observe, analyze, and respond rather than simply react. This journey we're about to take together will validate what you've always known deep down, that your emotional intelligence operates on a level that most people can't access or understand. You're not cold, you're strategically warm. You're not detached, you're selectively engaged. You're not emotionally unavailable, you're emotionally discerning. The world needs more men who can maintain emotional equilibrium in chaos, who can offer stability when others are drowning in emotional turbulence, and who can make decisions based on wisdom rather than impulse. That's exactly what we're going to explore in the coming chapters. Don't forget to subscribe to Official Sigma Male if you haven't already. We're the only channel that truly understands the sophisticated emotional landscape of the Sigma male. Mind, your emotional strength isn't a flaw to fix, it's a gift to master. Let's begin this journey of understanding and embracing the true power of Sigma emotional intelligence.